assess how popular Mussolini's policies were with the Italian people in the years 1925 to 1941. Mussolini's policies after he established his dictatorship in 1925-26, via the exceptional decrees and press laws, were designed to fascistize Italian society through propaganda, economic autarky, social control, religious accommodation, and aggressive foreign policy. Measuring popularity is difficult because of censorship, the OVRA's secret police, and the cult of the Duce, which created an illusion of mass consent. Nevertheless, evidence from plebiscites, mass organization membership, public demonstrations, and contemporary reactions shows that support varied sharply by policy, social group, and period. While certain initiatives, especially the Lateran Pacts, Dopolavoro leisure programs, and the Abyssinian Victory, generated genuine enthusiasm among middle-class nationalists and Catholics, economic hardships, repression, and the disasters of 1940-41 produced widespread acquiescence rather than active loyalty. Overall, Mussolini's policies enjoyed only limited and fluctuating popularity. They peaked in the mid-1930s, but were never universal and were declining sharply by 1941, relying more on coercion than genuine consent. One area of relative popularity was the regime's social and leisure policies, particularly the Opera Nazionale dopo Lavoro, OND, founded in 1925. By 1936, the OND had organized 80% of salaried workers. By 1939, nearly 40% of the industrial workforce, almost 3 million members, participated in its sports clubs, cinemas, seaside holidays, and discount schemes. These programs were genuinely popular with urban workers because they offered affordable recreation in a country still scarred by post-war poverty and the Great Depression. Similarly, the Opera Nazionale Balilla, ONB, and its successor Gioventù Italiana del Littorio, GIL, attracted many young people through camps, sports, and parades. For boys especially, the activities provided excitement and a sense of belonging that liberal Italy had never offered. These mass organizations therefore created real, if shallow, consent among the petty bourgeoisie and youth, helping to explain the high turnout and 99% yes vote in the 1934 plebiscite. However, participation was often pragmatic rather than ideological. Many workers joined for the benefits rather than fascist conviction, and parents frequently resented the indoctrination of their children. Thus, while Dopolavoro and youth policies broadened the regime's appeal in the 1930s, they never converted the majority into committed fascists. Religious policy provided another significant boost to popularity. The Lateran Pacts of February 1929 ended the 50-year Roman question by recognizing Vatican City, granting the Church financial compensation, and making Catholicism the state religion while allowing Catholic action to continue, with restrictions. The pacts were greeted with street celebrations and hugely enhanced Mussolini's prestige. Even non-fascists praised him as the statesman who had reconciled Italy with the Pope. Given that over 90% of Italians were Catholic, this single policy secured the loyalty of the church hierarchy and much of the rural population, removing a major source of potential opposition. De Fellis rightly identified 1929 as a high point of consensus. Yet popularity here was conditional. Catholic action remained a rival focus of youth activity, and the 1938 racial laws strained relations with the Vatican. The pacts therefore delivered genuine but partial popularity, strongest among traditional Catholics rather than the urban working class. The most spectacular surge in popularity came from foreign policy, above all the Abyssinian campaign of 1935-36. Mussolini's invasion, culminating in the declaration of empire on 9 May 1936, produced an extraordinary wave of nationalist euphoria. The Giornata della Fede on 18 December 1935 saw millions, including the Queen, donate wedding rings to fund the war against League of Nations sanctions. Contemporary reports described it as a mystic fusion between regime and people. Renzo de Fellis called Abyssinia Mussolini's masterpiece, precisely because it made the regime widely popular across classes for the first time. Sporting successes, e.g. the 1934 and 1938 World Cups, were similarly harnessed to foster national pride. Elite groups, industrialists and landowners, also approved because conquest promised raw materials and markets. However, the later foreign adventures were far less popular. Intervention in Spain 1936–39 was costly and divisive. The Pact of Steel 1939 and the parallel war of 1940 alarmed many who remembered 1915–18 and distrusted Germany. The humiliating failure of the Greek campaign, launched in October 1940, Italian forces pushed back until German intervention in 1941, and early North African reverses shattered the Duce's aura. By 1941, rationing, bombing, and mounting casualties had turned initial war enthusiasm into gloom and criticism, especially among merchants and intellectuals. Foreign policy thus produced the regime's highest popularity in 1936, but contributed to its rapid decline thereafter. Economic and racial policies generated far more unpopularity. The battle for grain, launched 1925, and battle for land increased wheat output so that Italy was self-sufficient by 1939, while public works, Pontine marshes, autostrade reduced unemployment during the Depression. These were propagandized as triumphs and won some rural and middle-class support. Yet the corporative state, Charter of Labor 1927, banned strikes and cut wages, alienating industrial workers whose real incomes fell. Autarky after 1935 raised prices and created shortages. The 1938 racial laws, imposed to align with Hitler, had no deep roots in Italian society and provoked widespread distaste, especially among the middle class and church. Women's policies, battle for births, job restrictions also failed. Birth rates barely rose and many women resented being confined to the home. Repression underpinned everything. The OVRA, confino, internal exile, and censorship ensured that discontent rarely became open opposition, but police reports reveal grumbling over living standards and the realization that the regime's battles had not delivered prosperity. Thus, while propaganda masked failures, economic and racial policies limited genuine support to a narrow base and sowed seeds of disillusionment. In conclusion, Mussolini's policies were popular with the Italian people only to a limited and uneven extent between 1925 and 1941. They achieved genuine peaks of support through the Lateran Pacts, 1929, Dopolavoro and youth organizations, and especially the Abyssinian Triumph, 1936, which unified nationalists and Catholics and produced the broadest consensus of the regime's history. Elite groups and much of the middle class benefited from stability and prestige. However, repression via the OVRA and the superficial nature of consent, acquiescence rather than conviction, meant popularity was never deep-rooted. Economic hardships, the unpopularity of racial laws, and the military disasters of 1940–41 caused support to erode rapidly after the mid-1930s. By 1941, the regime relied far more on coercion than popularity. The swift collapse of fascism in 1943–45 confirms that beneath the rallies and plebiscites lay widespread passive acceptance at best. Mussolini's policies therefore created an illusion of mass enthusiasm, but failed to forge lasting loyalty among the Italian people.